whoever is going to win the AI wars, whether it's LLM wars or hardware wars or software, they're all going to have to work with Palantir. So they're completely agnostic to the business side of the AI wars. They're just sitting at the finish line waiting for who's ever going to win. And because look at this way, right? I think the best way to explain it. So we use ChatGPT every day, Claude every day. I'm dying to try OpenClaw. I don't know if you had a chance. I'm so intrigued by
I
OpenClaw.
haven't tried it myself yet,
I'm
but
so
I've seen
scared, bro.
plenty.
I'm so terrified. I'm so scared, right? By OpenClaw. It's like I have to try it. On the other hand, that's like a crazy girlfriend, bro. You don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's the one that's gonna take you to Tijuana and make you get a tattoo of a horse on your forehead. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily a good idea. So, like, there's a lot of stuff going on in the LLM side of things, right? And we can go ChatGPT and we can do crazy things with ChatGPT, but most companies can't just go on ChatGPT or Claude and utilize their business through that platform because of many reasons: cost, as far as tokens, security, regulation, privacy, you name it. There's like 10 different reasons why they can't do it. So if you are a large organization and you want to integrate AI into your business, which you do because not integrating AI into your business is a death sentence, right? So you
Right.
need somebody to come in and say, hey, we can help you deploy whatever AI you need in a safe, secure, cheap, cost-efficient, compliant way. And there's nobody that can do that today, which is what makes Palantir one out of one.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job of breaking it down, really explaining that it's not so much the case as some of the others in this area where you have ChatGPT, building versus Claude, building versus other LLMs, Grok, et cetera, or even, the suppliers, right, of Nvidia, AMD, and other pieces like that. Palantir sits in a different segment of the AI game where there is a lot less competition, if any, right? And
Yeah.
everything kind of all roads lead back to them. Would you say that?
Yeah. It's like let's say you buy an amazing gaming computer, right? You need the operating system to run the hardware. So the hardware is worthless unless you've got the drivers, the operating system. So that is Palantir in a nutshell, pretty much. And it took them 20 years to build it. People used to knock Palantir for saying, oh, it's not new and exciting. It's been around for, 5 years ago, it's been around for 17 years. I said, yeah, that's the whole point. It takes a long time to build what they built, which also is a good thing for you as an investor because it's not going to be very easy to copy. The moat for Palantir is probably as insurmountable as you can think of, based on the amount of man hours you're going to need, reverse engineering you're going to need, money you're going to need. And on top of this, even if you do, you don't have the compliance, you don't have the trust from the government, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the incentive for somebody to come into this space and compete with this monster is not there. It's like, why would you want to put in, hundreds of billions of dollars into building a losing product and compete with, MJ on the basketball court? You'd rather do something else.
Understood. Understood. So just going over a little bit more kind of the data on the back end, just so people can understand, this is really ramped up. You've gone from back in the end of 2023, where this company was doing $600 million in revenue, and you've really ramped up to the point where now they're doing almost 1.5 billion in revenue, right? So almost a
Yep.
triple just over a couple of years. But the chart is basically just going parabolic up and to the right. They've beat on EPS every single quarter since Q3 of
Yep.
2022. So that is almost a dozen consecutive beats at this point. It's continued to move forward. So I think one of the questions is, though, you don't typically look at stock price, right? We even were getting on here, you're
No.
like, hey, I know that they had a great report. You're like, I have no idea how much the stock is up from last night. I'm like, it's up 11.5%, right? It's really running. So talk to me about paying attention more to the fundamental basis of
Fundamentals.
the
Yeah.
company and your investment rather than focusing on stock price.
So just before I came on here today, I had a live session with my community. We had one yesterday morning and today after earnings. And some guy at the end asked me, hey, Tom, I think the price should have run up a lot higher given how great these. And I really I gave them some tough love. I said, that's not how long-term investors think. If you're focused on short-term price fluctuations, you're not a long-term investor. You're a trader. And you're not supposed to be in this group because we're all about long-term hold, fundamental analysis. Short-term price fluctuations are bipolar, insane, illogical, and crazy. Some people learn how to navigate them and make money, and I'm all for them, no problem at all. But there's no logic in it. There's no rationale in it. They can, it can almost be to a point I might not even look at the Palantir share price for a whole week. Easy. It's not in my radar. Okay. What I'm obsessed about day in and day out is researching the business, is researching the environment, the total addressable market, is talking to actual engineers who work with Palantir and finding out experts who can enlighten me, because I'm not a technical guy, right? So I need a lot of help. So I'm investing my resources not in following the daily price swings, which won't help me at all. It's not that I can look at it and pollute my brain with it, but it's not going to promote me as a long-term investor at all. But I'd rather invest time in looking at stuff, for example, like this morning, I was like looking at, okay, so let's look at the operating income trend for Palantir, right? So operating income, to me, is one of the most important metrics of a company, because it shows you so gross margin is not enough to understand a software company, because there's nothing in gross margin. They're all 80%. It's pretty easy, right? On the other hand, net income, a lot of accounting bullshit goes in there, which has nothing to do with the business. So I like operating income as a really good metric to understand how good the business is running or not, right? So, and I look at the trend and it's like, oh my goodness. And most people don't realize this, but over the past 12 months, that's it. The previous Q4 was Q4 2024. This is Q4 2025. So past 12 months of reporting, Palantir operating income went from 11 million to 600 million. It's almost like you have to double check this number. It's like, what? It's like, and we're not talking about, if a company is making 5 and then 50 or 10x, yeah, it's 50 million, bro. It's a little bit misleading, but we're talking about, north of $500 million of operating income, 50 times increase in operating income in a year.
That's insane.
That is insane. And you keep looking at this shit and you're saying, but that don't make any sense, because look at the numbers. If you look at if you isolate U.S. revenue, government and commercial, they've doubled revenue year over year. They went from 550 to north of $1 billion in a year. So we're talking about it's a $400 billion company that's doubling its revenue year over year. And I know people say, well, you're only looking at US. The entire growth is 70%. By the way, 70% is still super impressive. But the reason I'm looking at the US because that's the TAM. There's unfortunately, not a lot of tech in Europe. Like Europe isn't a tech hub, at least for now. So if you want to be selling software, business software, that's the TAM. In that geography, growing 93% is spectacular. I mean, I didn't expect that. I thought they're going to smash, but they even exceeded my expectations, to be honest.
I really like that breakdown of walking through the different line items and settling in on the operating income. Is there any other line items like that where they really stand out to you? So what else is like people look at X metric, but that is not a good metric to look at. I look here, this is more proper.
Yeah. The other thing is, we're talking about dollars. Look at operating margin, which is a cousin of operating. Operating income is money, but let's look at percentages, right? Because it's also important. Over the past year, the operating margin went from 45 to 57%. So this is a company that's just, almost south of 60% operating margin. That's insane. And if you look at Palantir across the years, they've always had that. You would always see these good growth numbers, but you look at operating expenses, they're like growing by 3%, 5%. And then, So it's very, very scalable business, because essentially, think about it. They're selling a digital product. Yes, it requires some customization, requires some maintenance, but it's essentially a digital product. It requires deployment, et cetera, but the best scalable business to sell is a digital product, because you don't have to make hardware and shipping, et cetera. They've cracked the code, right? So find the digital product that everybody needs, and then you can basically name your price.
What do you think about the onset now of, Claude and these other coding programs? Do you think that this makes them even more efficient, right? Palantir can utilize some of these different pieces to continue to scale the software side?
Are you talking about OpenClaw or Claude? because it's
Just
confusing.
just the general idea of these really impressive
Okay.
AIs and LLMs, utilizing them almost as employees in their systems.
It's beyond impressive. It's beyond impressive. So, a buddy of mine, he runs he's now setting up a startup, and he's a very experienced guy, made a lot of money already, super savvy guy, and he said, look, I'm not hiring junior developers anymore at all, zero. I'm just Claude is basically doing everything. Like I'm basically managing a bunch of agents at this point. I don't have junior devs anymore at all, and it's only going to get insanely more, exponentially more like that. Again, looking back at what's going on, if you've seen for the past week what's going on with the OpenClaw or Maltbot or Claude, whatever, with the WED, whatever, like if you look at what this thing is able to do, have you seen some of the stuff? It's just mind blowing. It's so do you know they have their own social network? Have you seen it? Maltbook, and they're like making jokes about humans and strategizing. It's insane. Now, it may be all a scam. It may be just all, who knows, right? But if it's not a scam, it only makes a product like Palantir more important, in my opinion. Now, going back to the real world, right? When AI is essentially getting ahead of itself and is essentially like the exponentiality of its development, it's like in the books, in the first 5 hours, 10 hours. So if you're trying to avoid a dystopian future, which is, I hope, everybody's goal here, right? If you're trying to avoid a dystopian future where this is a Frank Herbert book, if you remember how Dune basically evolved when they essentially ended up banning all AI, right? So if you're trying to avoid dystopian future, you need some software that is human-driven to kind of curtail this whole thing and direct it in the right way, right? I think Elon Musk is trying to do that. And he's been, from day one, saying, hey, this is what I want to harness AI and essentially make sure it doesn't kill us, but we manage to get as much of it as we can. I think Palantir is the way to do it for businesses. If AI becomes more and more self-aware and independent, et cetera, you need a software like AIP to basically make sure none of this dystopian shit ever happens. So I think the importance becomes even greater. The better AI gets, the more important Palantir becomes.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think this goes hand in hand with what you're talking about. And you mentioned that if you were to say there was any other company that's a unicorn like this, would be Nvidia. Yep. And the two companies did announce a strategic partnership in late 2025 to build these integrated stacks for operational AI, right? Combining Nvidia's accelerated computing and AI models with Palantir's data and decision-making platforms. Seems like this could be the partnership of a lifetime. Curious, I know you've talked already about it, but what do you think of this partnership? What could it do for Palantir in 2026 and moving forward?
Yeah, the only thing that can stop this from becoming what I think it's going to become is regulatory constraints. Because unless the FTC comes in and basically says, hey, this is basically too monopolistic, right? Well, they've done it before when Nvidia and ARM were trying to merge, if you recall that, years ago, right? Yep. I don't think it's going to happen here because they're not merging. It's just it's a partnership. But it's a very monopolistic move because Nvidia is a quasi-monopoly, or at least a duopoly in the hardware sector, in the GPUs with AMD, and they're much bigger than AMD. Although AMD has massive potential, right? So them joining forces so think about it, the hardware, the gold standard of the hardware, which everybody wants, with the software platform to manage it, which everybody wants in one stack, it's going to be very hard to beat. It's the same reason why all the big hyperscalers they basically partnered up with Palantir. You can get it on Azure, you can get it everywhere on all of these platforms because again, there is there is no alternative. If you want to be implementing AI in the business world, you gotta have Palantir. And by the way, I said this, I don't know if you recall this, back in 2020, 2021, and especially in 2022, the big knock on Palantir was they were having trouble getting through the door. And the reason, and I heard this from multiple people in the business, and the problem was this. So basically, if you have somebody in the organization that spent millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, Frankensteining a solution that sort of does what Palantir does. Less efficient, more expensive, et cetera, et cetera. It's not in their best interest to bring in a company and to present it to the board and to the CEO and say, hey, you know what I spent money on? We don't really need that. These guys can do it better, right? So they would block Palantir because of self-preservation. It's like, we don't want to look like idiots. And I said in 2022, I said, that doesn't scare me at all. And the reason it doesn't scare me is because at some point, their survival, the job survival, is going to depend on having Palantir. So the not looking good part is going to be diminished compared to not having the tool that everybody else has, and they'll have no choice but to do it. Otherwise, they will surely lose their jobs, right? So not having Palantir is going to be such a problem that not looking good, right? We got to have this because we're getting killed, right? And now you're seeing this play out. My only concern actually was Microsoft back in the day. I said, Microsoft has a tendency of letting these things kind of play out and then coming in later with their ecosystem with potentially a lesser quality product, right? But basically pushing people out. And there was an attempt, I don't know if you remember Microsoft Fabric, rest in peace. No, exactly. So my point, nobody remembers Magic Cab because of Uber. So yeah, Fabric was it, and it basically became a fart in the wind. And so now I'm super calm and relaxed about the Palantir's future. Now, basically Microsoft took their shot, and they like found out real quick it's not Slack. This ain't Slack. And basically now they're partnering, working together. So they're too big right now. Nobody can swallow them.
Yeah, it's crazy that they went all the way up to what, 25th or somewhere in the 25 to 40th largest company in the world already. So obviously there's a recognition. Let's talk about where this company could get to. Is this in your eyes, is this $1 trillion company?
Yeah, of course. When I said it, I was the first one to say it, and people called me an idiot, including people from the Palantir community. Not all, but some. So I said this, that you can bring up all thumbnails for me from 2020 with the $500 per share thumbnail. They're very famous, actually. And at some point, they became a meme because people from within the I'm not talking about people who said this is a $5 stock. They rest in peace their career. But I'm talking about like within the Palantir community, serious people would run a DCF and they would say, well, we really appreciate Tom's optimism and maybe, but like realistically, if everything goes well, this is like a $30 stock that would be amazing. We're still going to, make a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, guys, you don't understand exponentiality. Like human beings have a way to think linear, and they don't understand that this can happen at any moment. And I said, hey, watch yourself, because this is not going to be a 15% per year growth. At some point, this is going to happen. Now, I didn't know it's going to happen this fast because when I started covering it in 2020, AI wasn't there yet. So I didn't realize fully how much of a boost it's going to get because of AI, because I thought it's going to happen naturally. But with AI, essentially accelerated all my predictions. I thought they'll be by $1 trillion by 2030. I think it's going to happen a lot sooner now.